How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Hi, Tonya. It's so
Same
nice to be on your
here.
podcast. Very
Welcome,
excited to
welcome,
be
welcome to the
here.
WomEconomics podcast. As you know, the goal of this podcast is really just to create a platform to share stories, experiences, and the career paths taken by good economic students like yourself. So just a background, in case you guys don't know. So Favour and I went to Covenant University together. We're one of the first class babes, we're,
hmm
we're usually in front there, the professors getting that information and getting A's in our papers. But now Favour is doing amazing things, and we're so happy to have you join Women Economics community and also come on this podcast. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here and to just get to talk with
Love
you
that.
about everything
So today's
economics.
podcast is about economics and international development. So who is Favour? Favour is an economist
hmm
and a writer skilled in research, public policy, and international development. She currently serves as the research coordinator for the UN Women UK CSW 67 Voice Research Project, and she's co-leading an incredible team of 40 plus UN CSW 67 delegates who are trying to assess the disparity in digital access for women throughout the UK. Favor's bio is very long, but I will just highlight a few things so we can move on to the information we need from her today. But she
Yes, please.
Favor, there's a lot to say. I'm looking at bio, I'm like, okay, I need to cut off some things. But she holds a MPhil in development studies from the University of Cambridge. She also has experience working with the Central Bank of Nigeria, where she did a lot of good work in economic advisory to firms in the insurance, asset management, and private equity industries. And also know she has experience working with the Cambridge Development Initiative, which she will talk more about in this podcast. So, Favour, thank you for joining us. We're happy about the great work you're doing. You're so passionate about creating strategic partnerships and doing a lot of things to help women alleviate poverty and really support global development. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you,
I love
Tonya.
that.
Really excited to be here.
So
Thank you so
now we're
much.
gonna have some icebreakers just to get to know you a little bit and see if you still have those economic skills. Okay. So did economics choose you, or did you choose economics?
That's a that's a really good
Mm-hmm.
question, actually. Um, I think it's both because I had a
Mm-hmm.
teacher in high school. His name was Mr. Osho, and he was an economics teacher. And I remember the first time he came to the class, he was like, "Osho is my name. Let's
Okay.
start." So that's how he came with a lot of enthusiasm. And back then, I didn't really like any subject. Like what I really liked was English and literature, commerce, but I didn't really see myself doing anything full time in these things. Even though I was a writer, I wanted something a bit more in the corporate side of things. So I was just speaking to him because he was one of my favorite teachers. I was asking him that, out of all the subjects I do, I really like economics. Is there any maths in economics when I go to uni? I was like, oh
Lies.
no, 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 it's fine.
Lies.
He lied to me basically. But I think one thing I really liked about economics was that it helped me understand the world. And as a young person, as someone who likes to read a lot, I had a lot of questions, just how the world works, how people think, and that's really what economics is about: is bringing the sciences together, but then showing you the human aspect of it. So showing you the social aspect of it. How why does math make sense the way it does, and how does it apply to our daily lives? And that's kind of what economics is. And for someone like me who is always asking questions, economics has kind of given me answers to a lot of things. So I'll say it's both ways. I chose economics because I thought it would be no maths involved, but then I see that it's a path that has really just helped me
I
understand how the
love
world
that.
works. And so yeah,
Thank you. That's a
I think
very
it's
good
both ways.
story. Very inspiring.
Yeah.
I was also team no math. I don't like his stuff. And I saw the econometrics and the
Mm.
calculus. I was like, you guys don't tell me.
Me,
You guys did not tell
you,
me.
they did
But all
not
those
tell us
things
at
help
all.
you be a
At
better
all.
analytical person, right? So Just go through it. Make sure you pass.
Yeah,
That's it. Just make sure
absolutely.
you pass. A C is a
Absolutely.
pass. So another question we have for you,
Exactly.
Favour, is
Absolutely. I agree.
when you think about your favorite economic theory, what comes to mind?
Honestly, it's kind of cliche, but it's
So
the theory of demand and supply. I can't even lie.
it makes
It's
so much sense.
honest because it literally it makes everything makes sense when you understand it, the
Mhm.
like demand and supply. Even when it comes to like your daily lives, even when it comes to
Yeah.
choosing a job, a career path, or like starting a business, or even making friends, right? So what do I want in my life, and how can I get it? Who is offering that to me? That's what life is about. It's really about demand and supply. Like everything makes sense with that. So for me,
I think for
I
me, the
think that's
first
my
time I
favorite
heard
theory.
supply creates its own demand, I was like, say that again. Supply. Like when you see it, you would not want it. I was like, oof, that's deep. That's
Like, no,
deep.
economics is so fascinating. Like when it also thinks about like
Yeah.
it deals with psychology as well. Like it's fantastic. I really honestly I would advise anyone. Okay, it's kind of biased, but everyone
Period.
should be an
That's on
economist,
Favor.
I think.
Period.
But yeah,
So thank you, Favor, for sharing those with us. You did
yeah.
talk about your journey in economics, why you chose that path by answering that first question. But how would you say economics has really impacted your career and what you're doing now?
Hmm. Yeah. So for me as a person, I kind of like a
Mhm.
lot of things at the same time. So I'm someone who, and I think that's one reason why I chose economics. I feel like it
Mhm.
overlapped a lot of things, so it kind of helped me explore different interests. One thing for me is I like to connect the dots. I like to understand why a thing
Right.
makes sense, how it makes sense, and what makes it make sense. So economics has helped me see things both in terms of what is the determinant of a thing and then what is the effect of a thing, right? So, in terms of my career path, you can apply it even in finance in itself, like thinking about financial markets. What are the market inputs, or what are the things that cause reactions from investors, from people in the markets, from stakeholders as well in businesses, and then look at it in terms of the macro aspects of things. And then even for development in itself as well, economics has also kind of helped me see what are the actual problems that need to be solved. So why is the world the way it is? What are the possible solutions that we can? So it's always cause and effect. What is causing this? What is the effect of this? And what can be the solution? So for every career decision I've ever made, when I was in central banking, when I was in consulting, when I was fully in finance, private equity, asset management, always just thinking about what are the main problems, what are the main problems really, and then what are the solutions and how do we get there? So what is the cause, what is the effect, that kind of thing. So yeah. I think just always
Yeah.
thinking as an economist
I love
is
that.
fantastic.
And it's interesting
It
that
really
the
does help
core
in
theories,
career.
like
Yeah.
the whole cause and effect co-integration, these are things that actually just make sense. But putting it in a theory and then knowing how to measure it
Hmm.
makes economics different and interesting. So I love that you shared that. Um,
Exactly.
and diving more into your career and what you're doing now in international development, can you tell us more about the international development industry and what do you see are key trends given everything that's
Mhm.
going on in the world?
Honestly, there's a lot happening at this right now. But I think I'll say that there are three things. So the first thing is that we see that problems are a little bit more complex than we had initially thought, just in the sense of, for example, let's take poverty. So when we first started with poverty, it was there is a hard poverty line, and who is above that line and who is below that line. But over the years, we've seen that there's something called multidimensional poverty, right? So who is really like who can we say is a really poor person? So we're just looking in terms of financial, we're looking at your social assets, right? We're also looking at your psychological assets. We're looking at your access to opportunities. We're looking at not just do you have clean water, do you have food, but then are you able to, do you have good, for example, early years education? Do you have access to good schools? Do you have access to international opportunities? Is your world as connected as it can be so that you're able to actually prosper as a human being? So we see that, poverty as an example on its own is a lot bigger than what we think about when we just look at the financial aspects of things. So that's one thing that we're really seeing in development, in international development in itself, is that problems are a little bit more complex than what we thought they were. And that's also because of, one, the advent of technology. For example, it has really made the world one global village. And so everyone is thinking about, how does this affect this person in Croatia? How does it affect this person in Kenya? So there's a lot of things that have been involved. So understanding that problems are a little bit more complex. And so because of that, solutions have to be even more innovative. It's something that we're seeing in the development space. And then another thing is that, which is quite interesting, because it's a bit of a, let's say, like a an opposite, is that we're also seeing that one good answer to these complex problems is having a local solution. So before, in development many years ago, a lot of theories that were made, lots of solutions that were brought up, were done based off of the Western world, or what we call the global North. So it's so this is the way it's worked in the West. This is the way it's worked in the US, in the UK, in Europe. And so we would take these exact solutions and try to apply them to, say, a place in Latin America, or say a place in India, or a place in Africa, or whatever. And we see that this doesn't necessarily work, because every place is so, the cultural context is so different, that you cannot apply this, because, as we know, culture does affect economics as well. It affects society. So we're seeing that one thing that's very important is having that local awareness, or that awareness that local is best. So really locally designing solutions that will last, because, one, you're doing your best to understand the actual problems in every society that you're considering. So that's one thing. So there has been that increased awareness over the days. So gone are the days where you're sitting in an office far away, and trying to design programs for and implement programs for other people, when you're not able to actually experience, the problem firsthand. So that's another thing. And then a third thing is a robust understanding of systems thinking in global development. So, for example, like I've said before, people do not exist in a vacuum. So they are located within a family, in communities, in states and provinces, and you have to be able to address the issues that one individual faces, while understanding the ways that other parts of their lives is also being affected, right? So you want to be sure that, if you're, say, you're addressing education, for example, and you're saying, for example, we want more girls to go to school. You need to understand, okay, what background do they come from? Are their families able to provide for them? If not, then how can we ensure that, one, their families are aware of the importance of education for young girls, and then also economically help their family to what we call have social mobility, so that they can actually send their kids to school. And so, one, that is probably helping the families with like small businesses and things like that, because at the end of the day, cause and effect. So if they do have if their families are socially and economically able to send their kids to school, then we see more girls in school, because, one, their families are well aware of the importance of having girls in school, and they're also able to send their
I love
kids to school. So it's not just, okay, we want to have girls in school, so let's create this educational curriculum that would appeal to girls. That's great, but then how do we actually get these girls in the classrooms? So you have to understand that it's a world, or every solution you make has to look at different things in its entirety. So that is how you make a
Wow.
system
Favour,
a
that is
solution.
amazing. And I think if this is how international development is going, we are definitely in the right path. Because I can remember even in school then, when we used to hear of all these policies, even like the IMF fundings that we do get in Nigeria, and how some of the conditions they are giving us is like, this
Mm,
is a third world country. Like, we can't meet that. We're still developing. Why are you giving us
yeah,
conditions that are crazy, interest rates that we can never afford, right? So I love that it's a system
exactly.
approach,
Yeah.
and I do believe also what you said about the local solutions. I did hear of a research that some economists did. They were trying to encourage parents to get immunization for their kids, and they did like an awareness campaign in India, and they were telling people, "Oh, come on, there's a immunization clinic here. Come get your kids," and nobody went. And they're like, "Okay." let's say if you come, you get $10, and they went and they started giving people $10, and people started coming. So sometimes it's not about making policy. You have to be there, test and try, see what is effective,
Exactly.
and then proceed. So I'm happy
Exactly.
that I think that's the right path. Every economy is different, every family is different, different things appeal to different people. So having that local grounded approach would definitely bring more results. So thank you for sharing that. So on to this next question
Absolutely.
is this is one I'm
Yeah,
very
that's
excited
okay.
about, and I know on your LinkedIn, Instagram, you're
Mm-hmm.
always very vocal about your involvement with UN Women, and I think that you're also working on a new initiative to help children, which is amazing. So, can you tell us a bit about your experience specifically? Maybe one liner for the Central Bank of Nigeria, another one liner for the CDI experience, and then like two, three liners for the UN Women experience. Because I know a lot of us are interested in supporting UN's goal in building and encouraging gender
Mm-hmm.
equality. So can you tell us about that experience?
Absolutely. So running through my
One
experience
line.
at the Central Bank of Nigeria, I was there.
One line.
One line. I was there for about 3 to 4 years. I was there for about 3 to 4 years, and I was in the monetary policy department. And so basically, what I did, in a nutshell, was looking at the health of banks and how that affects one, how monetary policy affects the financial stability of the Nigerian economy, and one, a major player in terms of financial stability for Nigeria is the health is commercial banks. So just ensuring that the banks are healthy, there's enough liquidity, and if there isn't liquidity, why isn't there liquidity? And then writing papers on what's happening in the world and how that affects monetary policy. So it was very interesting because you always have to stay updated on what's happening in the world, how that affects monetary policy, and how that will affect banks and how that will affect the financial stability. So that's basically what I did. And then for CDI, I worked with an organization in Tanzania called Kite International. They were a partner organization. And what we basically did with them is help them build community based solutions for entrepreneurship, education as well. So we partnered with USAID, we partnered with a lot of organizations to ensure that there was an increase in quality education for people in Tanzania, especially in Dar es Salaam, which is one of the cities in Tanzania. And then for the UN Women UK, what I currently do, I'm the research coordinator for the Voice Project, which basically is a project that looks at the access to technology for women across the UK. As we know, there has been a boom in technology, access to technology, digitalization, AI has also come into the mix. So there's a lot happening when it comes to technology. But we see that even with that, there is still inequality in terms of access to technology. So even when it comes to safety for women online, when it comes to using various apps, there are softwares that don't necessarily have that don't take gender into consideration. So basically what we're trying to do is see what is the extent of lack of access to technology for women in the UK, especially for women from marginalized communities. So, for example, much older women, or women from LGBT, or women from less represented communities, really. So, people of color, things like that, people that are disadvantaged, that might not be able to access technology, and also those who have probably been in that have had like tough situations and just do not have access to technology. So basically what we're doing is looking at that, seeing what their experiences are, and then when we have made this research, feeding it to policymakers, because at the end of the day, research is fantastic, but then what can we actually do with the research? So our end goal is to ensure that we take the voices of these women from the research that we have done, and then we show that to policymakers and say, this is what is actually happening in the UK. Even with the boom of technology, people are still being left behind, and so they take this into consideration when they are making policies for safer access to technology. They're looking at it from a gendered perspective, and also when it comes to actually accessing technology, maybe because of maybe socioeconomic barriers as well. They're taking that into consideration. So that is what we are trying to
That
do
is
with our research,
amazing. And I can't
basically.
wait to see the final research. This will be available to the public as well.
Yeah.
So
Definitely. The end goal is that everyone can
definitely, the
access
promise
it.
would love
Yeah.
to share those findings. As you know, we're women based. So any findings that can help promote the challenges that
Yeah,
we face as women and policies that can support us, we're happy to champion those. So if I wanted to
for
go
sure.
into
Definitely.
international development, what key skills, say top three
Hmm.
skills, would you recommend I focus on? Or certifications, that will help me be set. Imagine a
Hmm.
fresh grad, right? And they want to go into this field. What would you recommend should be skills they should?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, that's a fantastic question because it's something I've kind of had to figure out along the way. I would say, let's use UN Women UK for example. I think one thing that is good is to be open to volunteering. So this role that I'm in is not paid. It's a volunteer role, but then you see that you do have access to UN Women UK and people UN Women UK. But for example, you do begin to build your own network even within the UN
As
Women
important.
or within the
Mm-hmm.
UN. So, yeah, so based on my experience, I was a delegate for CSW 67 last year. And one of the side events that I attended was MGCY, which is the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. And I signed up for their newsletter, and so I've been going for a lot of consultations that they've had, just providing my own insights into various documents that they're making for various UN programs or meetings and things like that. And because I have access to the newsletters and I'm able to see any programs that come up, I'm able to apply for those programs, able to register. And one of the things that I did apply for was the ECOSOC Youth Forum, which happened in April, and I was invited to go for that forum. So you see that it does eventually add up, right? So so being able to network is very important, but then also just allowing your passion to play through anything that you're doing. So as a young graduate who's coming into development, you need to know what your why is and kind of stick to that and let that be your driving force and your guiding light. So being able to network with people is so essential, especially when you're coming into international development, because the world is so large, but then you need to make it as accessible to you as possible. So networking is so important. And then also show that you're able to commit to whatever it is that you do. So for example, when you sign up to all these volunteering roles, you need to show that you're committed, you're able to commit to that, because as we know, volunteering roles are not paid for. So be able to commit to that as well. And even when you volunteer, do not be afraid to talk about your passion and your interest to actually work for these organizations, because roles are always opening, like they're always vacant roles. So always express your interest that, what I would love to work for the UN, I would love to work for the World Bank, whatever it is, I would love to work for whatever organization it is that is your dream. Always talk about your interest in it, because you never know who's listening. You never know. There was a story I read of a guy who wanted to work at the World Bank, and what he would do is, there is like a street where a lot of World Bank staff would go for lunch, and he would just go there and meet people and talk to them, and tell them I'm very interested in working at the World Bank, and have lunches with the most random people. And that was how he was able to get an interview. One day he had a lunch with the right person, and they're like, oh yeah, there's this role that's open, send your CV to me. And
Wow.
that was how he got his interview, and now he's at the World Bank. And people are making thousands of applications every day for these roles, but because
That
he
is
decided to
radical.
use
I love that.
networking as his own way in, and he got
That's
it. Yeah,
radical.
like that is radical, but then you can see that exactly, but then you can see
Yeah.
his passion actually playing out. So it's very important that, like, you remember your why and you stick to it. I think so. Those three things is being passionate, showing that you're able to commit, and then also showing that you have the qualifications for whatever role that
In
you're
terms
also
of
applying for
technical
is very
skill,
important as
what
well.
would you recommend?
In terms of technical skill, that is a great question. So one thing is stakeholder management is so key, because if you're working in international development, you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of organizations, and people have differing views. So stakeholder management is key. Project management is key as well, because in international development, what you're doing is project after project, right? So you need to understand project management in itself, and then also analysis is very important. Data analysis is very key because you're working with data day in, day out. Data analysis is key. Stakeholder management, project management, and then also getting certification. So, for example, if you're into economic development, you want to get certifications in sustainable development. The CFA Institute, for example, they do have a certification now for sustainable development. So that's something that you can do. There are also certifications that you don't necessarily need to pay for. So one is Introduction to the Core Humanitarian Standard by the Humanitarian Leadership Academy. So that's one thing that you can get. So being able to apply and then being able to communicate is so key, because you'll be doing a lot of presentations to people, you'll be doing a lot of negotiating as well. So that is also really, really key. Being able to negotiate, being able to communicate, being able to properly manage people, so stakeholder management, being great at managing projects, so project management, and then data analysis. These are things that are very, very important, and they would always look out for when
These are amazing
hiring
skills,
people in
Favour, and
development.
I love that the volunteer opportunities help
Yeah,
you build these skills. So, if you're truly interested in international development,
exactly.
you have to start volunteering so that you can build these skills, have those projects in your belt, learn the
Hmm.
communication, data analysis, and to get you to where you need to be. Thank you for sharing that. So, know your why.
Definitely.
Raise up your hands to volunteer, build technical skills. If you want to get certifications, get them. Network, network, network. And hopefully you get those opportunities that you need. And for economics podcast, what makes us special is we always run through a case study. Favor, you've done a lot of projects, I know. So, is there any project you would like to walk us through just to understand your research process, your analytical process, so
Mhm.
the viewers can be informed and maybe help them if they're having interviews and things like that?
Absolutely. So I can talk about the recent project that we're working on, and just give some details on it. So for the UN Women UK's Voice project, um it started last year after CSW 67, and it started from an in-person brainstorming session, hackathon as it was called, that we did after CSW 67. So that conversation came from, okay, we have had the CSW 67, there's been a lot of conversations, but then we want to take action. So what can we actually do? So the UN Women UK came up with the hackathon, and yeah, and so that was what we had, and it was fantastic because we had this was one of the projects that came out of it. So after the project came out of it, it was then looking for the right people. So we had they had people apply. I applied for the project, and then also indicated that I wanted to be a focus lead, and I was qualified for the role, so I did get in. So for our project, what we have done first, we did the literature review. So we looked at the literature that is out there. What are the gaps that they're not filling? And then we looked at these gaps and said, okay, so what do we want to fill? What do we want to address from these gaps? Now that we've seen what the problems are, what do we want to address especially? And then when we found out why, which we called the research objective, then we started to build out what is the timeline that we think we would need for our research. After the timeline, what do we need? So do we need, what kind of research methodology? And so we decided that we needed to do a questionnaire and also have in-person interviews as well. And then, okay, great. So for in-person interviews, who are the people that we need to reach out to? What organizations can give us access to these marginalized communities? And so we did that, and now we're in the stage of actually sending out our surveys to people, to get responses, and then begin to analyze the data so that we can actually we can have our findings and then take that to policymakers. So we're currently in the stage of collating all the data from the in-person interviews and from the surveys as well. So after all that is collated, we have run through the data, run our regressions and things like that. Then we have our findings, and then we build policy recommendations, and then take the findings and the policy recommendations to policymakers. So that is how the
Wow,
research
that's a
goes.
smooth process.
Yeah,
Typical research process.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, just to add, there's also a lot of back and forth with you and Women
Mm,
UK in terms of approvals for various things, and also looking at the language as well, because you want to say things in the right way and ensure that people are properly included, and that your research, which the whole point of it is that it's very inclusive, so you want to ensure that the language that you use is inclusive as well. So the UN Women UK has been fantastic in guiding us with that, and also supporting us as well. We're reaching out to organizations. So just having that name behind our research does
I
open
love
doors
that.
for us as well.
Thank you
So
for
yeah.
sharing. So, typical research process: do your research, know the literature, get your data, analyze your information, share your findings with relevant stakeholders, and ensure that hopefully they're implemented. Because that's another thing. Hopefully, the UK
Yeah.
government, exactly, it's like
Push for
push
the
for it, campaign
implementation.
for it, get people to
Yeah.
sign
Yeah.
the thing people
Yeah.
sign. But I do hope that project,
Yeah.
comes to fruition and the results and the recommendations are fully implemented, not just in UK but globally. And I know you're working on a campaign now for kids. Do you want to
Absolutely.
take 30 seconds to talk about that?
Yes, yes. So I am a global youth ambassador for their world, and their world is focused on education. So the access to education for people all over the world. And they currently have a campaign known as the Act for Early Years campaign, and it's basically advocating and asking leaders um, to invest a total sum of $1 billion into education for young people, especially those between the ages of 0 to 5 years, because that is when the bulk of the brain development happens. So if they have the right education in that time, and if everyone has access to quality education in those early years, then you will see that there'll be a lot of improvement, one, even in the solutions that we think about for our worlds, because we have people who are properly trained, people who have properly developed in terms of their thinking capacity. So we are really, really pushing for that, and we want leaders to invest in early years education. So that's what the campaign is for. So we are campaigning to have people also buy into this campaign in terms of signing, offering their signatures to the campaign as well. So the more people that we have actually talking about this campaign, signing up for the campaign, the better it is to get the attention
Amazing
of global
campaign,
leaders.
definitely very needed. So if you're interested in
Yeah.
supporting or if you have a passion for child development, this is a campaign you can volunteer in and get started on your
Exactly,
international
so
development journey. Thank you, Favour, for sharing that. And we on our end will promote this and hopefully get some of our members to also sign and support this campaign. And just to end things off, this has been an
yeah,
interesting conversation. I've learned a lot about international development. I'm also very interested in international. I see myself doing that at the later part of my career. But for you, when you think about yourself in the next
yeah.
10 years, 10, 10 years, where do you
Mhm,
envision
mhm.
yourself in terms of the kind of impact you're making?
That's a big question. I think for me, it's really being a voice of influence when it comes to international development. I like to say being like another Okonjo-Iweala, but yeah, so being someone who, one, is a voice of influence in the international development, and looking at it not just from the corporate angle of things, economics, but also looking at it from the arts sides of it, because one thing that I have come to realize is that a lot of political movements, a lot of development movements actually starts from the arts. You see that a lot of people who are a lot of things that catch the attention of policymakers comes from poetry, music. What are people really talking about these days? And I think that's one reason why someone like Maya and Angelo, people like Chimamanda, are so respected, because they carry that, and because they're able to carry that, it begins to change the conversation in politics, changes the conversation in development. So I want to be someone that you can look at and say, this is a policymaker, and this is also someone who has a strong voice in the arts. So being a person of influence in these two areas is what it would be for me. So being someone that you can say, this is someone that is merging those two worlds together. I think that
I
would be
already
success
see it
for me in the next
happening.
10
So
years.
congratulations in advance. That is beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I read
Thank
your
you.
poems. There's something just different. I see that you write from your heart, and I'm happy that you want to combine that
Yeah.
even in your international development journey. I think that would be very impactful and help people connect with the problems that children, women, or whatever focus groups you're invested in, like highlighting their challenges and making it understandable to the layman that might never will
Yeah.
understand. And you can do that via music, right? Via poetry. So I love that you're looking at
Yeah.
combining that because it will definitely have a great impact. Okay. So we've come to the
Absolutely.
end of this
Absolutely.
podcast.
Thank you so
Favor, thank you
much.
so much for your time. Thank you for the wisdom shared. Favor, what's your IG if people want to follow you?
Yeah, my IG is at Favour_Emma. So I'm Favour_Emma pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, but you can
Great.
find me
So
Favour
Favor is
underscore
part of this
Emma.
community,
Yeah,
so you can reach out to her if you have some international developer question. If you want to volunteer, Favor will put you
absolutely.
on. But thank you, Favor, for your time. We're economists. We're very happy to have you. Thanks for the wisdom. I've learned a
Thank
lot.
you.
I've always reached out to you for the women, you and the women. How can I get involved? But now I see how I can. Sign up for those newsletters because a lot of information in those newsletters. Volunteer,
Yeah,
volunteer, and
a
continue
lot.
to build your network.
Mhm.
So thank you, Favor. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Have a
Thank you
good
so much, Tania. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
fantastic job with your
Thank
podcast.
you. You're
Thank you for
welcome. All
inviting
right.
me
Have a
on.
good one.
Thank you.